It is November 12th, 1966. You are standing in a graveyard in Clendenin, West Virginia. The air is damp, clinging to your skin like a cold sweat as you dig a grave. It is routine work for you and your crew, just another hole in the earth for another soul gone too soon. Then one of them stops and points toward the tree line. You see it before you understand what you are looking at. Two red lights hovering above the branches, steady and unblinking, as if something is watching through the dark. Your hands tighten around the shovel. The other men have gone still. No one speaks. That is when the shape rises. Wings open with a slow, deliberate sweep that feels almost human. It lifts from the trees without sound, massive and wrong, gliding over the cemetery with an unsettling grace. You try to step back, but your feet feel rooted to the soft earth. The thing passes directly overhead, close enough that you can see it is not a bird. It is tall, dark, silent, a presence that should not exist. Then it's gone, swallowed by the dusk. You stand there, shovel in hand, unsure whether you have seen a creature or some strange trick of the failing light. Within days, the story reaches Point Pleasant, stirring curiosity but not fear. Not yet, because this is only the beginning. 3 days later, on November 15th, two young couples were driving through an abandoned TNT area just outside town. As they drove past the old power plant, they saw something standing in the road. It was shaped like a man, but at least 7 feet tall, with wings folded behind its back like a waiting bird. Its eyes glowed in the headlights, fixed on the car in a way that felt almost confrontational. The couples later said they had never felt anything stare at them like that, as if it could see the fear settling into their bones. When the creature spread its wings and rose into the air, they hit the gas. Gravel spun out behind them as they sped up the road, hearts pounding in the kind of panic that feels almost metallic in your mouth. They reached nearly 100 miles per hour. The creature kept pace. Its eyes burned red in the darkness, and when the couples finally reached town and scrambled into the sheriff's office, they looked like they'd seen the end of the world. Sheriff George Johnson didn't laugh. People expected him to shrug the whole thing off, but he didn't. He drove out there himself. No creature, no glowing eyes, no wings stretching across the pavement. But he felt something. Reports say he described it later as a pressure in his chest, like the night itself had turned hostile. The police listened. They took statements. They checked the TNT area, though no one wanted to patrol a place known for strange echoes, cold pockets of wind, and the feeling that something moved between the abandoned structures. What they found were odd tracks near the old buildings, dog-like prints, but too large, deeper than they should have been. The air around the area felt wrong, as if the temperature dipped every few steps. Officers left quickly. As the sightings continued, the town's balance shifted. Reports came in from drivers, teenagers, hunters, and even families sitting on their porches at dusk. People claimed they saw a figure perched on rooftops or moving beside the river with a slow, predatory pace. The most consistent detail was always the eyes. Red, bright, and unsettling in a way that stayed with witnesses long after the encounter. Some described them as glowing like a pair of heated coals. Others said they pulsed with an out-of-this-world intelligence. But the Mothman legend was not only about what people saw. It was about what people felt. The creature seemed to carry a heavy aura, something that made the air feel thicker, as if a storm was building just out of view. Some witnesses reported headaches for days afterwards. Others said they felt watched whenever they were near the river or the TNT area. A few believed the creature projected a kind of warning, though no one could explain what it might be trying to say. This is where your attention sharpens, because, as you listen to these accounts, you sense the tension in the town rising. People locked their doors. They kept their children close. Hunters who once loved the woods refused to enter them after sunset. Something was building, and Point Pleasant felt like it was standing on the edge of a cliff it could not see. In the months that followed, the sightings continued, with an almost rhythmic consistency. They were frequent enough that local reporters began documenting them, trying to piece together whether the town was facing an unknown species or something spiritual, something not bound by the rules of the natural world. While some outsiders mocked the reports or wrote them off as hysteria, those who lived through it insisted that the atmosphere alone was proof that something had changed in their home. You cannot fake a town holding its breath. But the terror did not stay in the woods. It followed people home. As winter approached, strange phone calls began to plague several residents. People reported hearing beeping sounds, mechanical shrills, or distorted voices that cut off whenever someone tried to respond. Some believed these calls were tied to visits from mysterious figures described by author John Teal as part of the Men in Black phenomenon. Men dressed in dark suits who appeared suddenly, asked unsettling questions, and vanished without explanation. Witnesses said they spoke in tones that did not sound quite human, as if the words were memorized rather than spoken. Whether these men were real, misremembered, or imagined under stress remains debated, but their presence added a deeper layer of dread to the unfolding story. Point Pleasant had become the center of something it did not understand. When logic failed, the town turned to its ghosts. Old stories resurfaced, connecting the strange sightings to the land itself. Folklore began to blend with fear. Some referenced the Cornstalk Curse, a legend tied to Chief Cornstalk, a Shawnee leader killed at Fort Randolph in November 1777, despite coming in peace. The curse was said to fall upon the land as a warning of future suffering. While historians emphasize that the curse story was created long after his death and has no basis in historical record, the idea lingered in local memory, weaving itself into conversations as people searched for meaning in the growing unease. But legends alone could not explain what happened next. To understand the end, you have to see it for yourself. Imagine you are driving across a silver suspension bridge on a cold December evening. The Ohio River moves below you like a sheet of black glass. Holiday lights glow from the houses on both sides. Traffic is heavier than usual. People are out shopping, planning dinners, returning home from work. The world feels ordinary, the way it always does before something breaks. On December 15, 1967, during rush hour, the Silver Bridge collapsed. 46 people died in a matter of minutes as steel twisted, cables snapped, and cars dropped into the water below. It was the deadliest bridge disaster in the region's history, and it left the town stunned, grieving, and trying to understand how a structure that had stood for decades could fail so suddenly. Federal investigators later concluded that a single eye-bar had fractured due to stress corrosion and years of weight exceeding what the bridge had been built to support. It was a mechanical failure, tragic and preventable with modern engineering standards. But to the people who had lived through the Mothman sightings, the timing felt too meaningful to ignore. Reports claim that several residents saw the creature perched on the bridge days before its collapse, wings tucked close as if waiting. Others said they saw it flying over the river at dusk. Whether these sightings were real, imagined, or misremembered through the haze of trauma cannot be proven. But they formed the backbone of what would become the Mothman Prophecies, the idea that the creature was a warning, not a threat. John Teal, the author who popularized the legend, believed the sightings were part of a larger pattern of paranormal or interdimensional events. Scientists and skeptics argued that the witnesses likely saw a large bird, possibly a sandhill crane, though the descriptions of size, eye color, and flight style do not fully match the species. Others suggested owls, deer standing upright, or simple fear-induced misinterpretation. But none of these explanations accounts for the sheer number of sightings, many given by people who had no reason to fabricate anything. Once the bridge fell, the sightings of the creature stopped completely, as if whatever force had been haunting Point Pleasant had finished its work. Some interpreted this as proof that the Mothman had been warning the town about the danger. Others believed it was a harbinger of tragedy, a sign of death rather than a messenger trying to prevent it. The duality created a fracture in the legend that still divides believers today. After the collapse, the town began a slow process of healing. Families mourned, investigators worked, engineers rebuilt. Yet, the story of the Mothman did not disappear. It settled into the culture of Point Pleasant like a shadow that refuses to leave even when the sun is high. Over the years, people reported sightings in other parts of the world connected to disasters, including reports before the Chernobyl accident, though these claims remain unverified and likely grew from the myth rather than documented fact. Even so, the idea that a mysterious figure appears before catastrophe has become part of the global folklore surrounding the creature. In Point Pleasant today, the Mothman has become a symbol of curiosity rather than fear. The town hosts the Mothman Festival each year. There is a museum dedicated to the sightings, filled with original newspaper clippings, interviews, and items connected to the 1966 and 1967 events. The iconic statue stands in the center of town, polished by the hands of countless visitors who want to feel closer to the mystery. What once terrified a community has become part of its identity, a reminder that even the darkest stories can take on new meaning with time. But when you step back into the story, when you listen carefully to those who lived through it, the tone changes. You can hear the tremor in their voices when they describe the first night they saw something over the river. You can sense how deeply the fear ran in those months when the sun dipped behind the hills and the roads turned quiet. Something happened in Point Pleasant. Something the town still struggles to fully understand. The power of the Mothman story is not only in the creature itself, it is in the atmosphere that wrapped around the town. The calls, the sightings, the heavy sense of anticipation, the collective feeling that the world was about to shift. This blend of documented history and human emotion is what has kept the legend alive for so long. Every detail adds another layer, another reason to lean in and listen. You feel yourself drifting back into second person as you picture the old TNT area again. The cracked concrete paths, the domed bunkers hidden under vines, the faint echo of water rushing through old drainage tunnels. Walk through that place at night and you can understand why people believed something lived there. The silence does not feel empty. It feels expectant. The slightest movement sends a ripple of adrenaline through your chest. Even knowing the history, even understanding how fear shapes perception, you still find yourself glancing at the tree line, searching for eyes that glow red in the dark. When people discuss the Mothman today, the conversation often circles back to one question: was it real? The truth depends on what version of reality you accept. If you believe in cryptids or undiscovered creatures, the Mothman sightings could point to a species that appeared briefly, then vanished before scientists could document it. If you lean toward supernatural explanations, the creature becomes a messenger or an omen, something that slips through the cracks between moments. If you rely only on documented science, the legend becomes a case study in mass hysteria. A town under stress. A series of misidentified birds. A wave of anxiety that spread through the community like smoke. But no matter which interpretation you choose, the emotional truth remains the same. People in Point Pleasant saw something. Enough people told their stories with such consistency that the legend refuses to disappear. That persistence is what keeps you awake at night. It is not the creature itself. It is the knowledge that so many witnesses looked into the same glowing eyes and came away changed. Before you leave the story, picture the Ohio River one last time. The water moves with a slow, deliberate rhythm, carrying the memory of the silver bridge beneath its surface. Lights reflect off the current. The town is quiet now, peaceful. But stories like the Mothman do not fade. They wait. They settle into the soil and the riverbanks, into the concrete of the rebuilt bridge, into the air of a town that has learned to live with the unknown. If you ever drive through Point Pleasant at night, you may feel it too. A shift in the wind, a flicker in the corner of your eye, the sense that something old and watchful still moves through the shadows. And if you see two red lights rise above the tree line, steady and unblinking, you will understand why the legend never died. Because some stories do not end, they wait for you to look up.